you will find there are forces on the dark side that not even your powers can withstand.
An evil spirit is out for blood.
Darkness is my friend.
Does Superboy fall under his spell?
You cannot defy me.
Superboy, don't give in.
On the next Superboy.
Welcome back to Superboy Beyond. It is officially Spooktober. Hey guys, thought I'd give you the Halloween intro. It's officially Spooktober, so this is going to be part one of our Halloween-themed episodes. All to be released.
Technically, last week was with Haunting Vandy McAllister, but it wasn't recorded with that intention. Like it was supposed to be released about a month ago, but we decided that we may as well hold it off for Halloween. Otherwise, we've got to delay the comic book review until after October's over. Yeah. And I didn't really want to do that. So, yeah.
The first in our Halloween-themed episodes, and there are some in Superboy, is Young Dracula.
Yeah, we don't know if this was actually technically thought of as the Halloween special, but it may well have been. I don't know. When did it start airing in 89 season 2? September-ish, I think.
Yeah, I think it was like the second week of September. So this probably was planned as their Halloween theme.
Very nice. Yeah, this is season 2, episode 4, Young Dracula. An episode I don't have particularly strong feelings about or memories of. My main memory is thinking that the guy that played the older vampire, the more Dracula-looking guy, I remember his costume looked pretty cheap, and I remember this episode has a few weird moments, like a flying scene where he's flying stupidly close to the floor to the point where why didn't he just run? Yeah. But yeah, it's a weird shot. If they just raised him like half a meter higher, it would have looked fine. It was just, what are you doing? But anyway, I'm sure we'll talk about that when we get there. I don't remember if this is a particularly great episode in terms of writing, but the fact that they got a sequel, I hope it is, because why not? You know, I remember liking the main character from it. That's about my strongest memory. I remember liking the main dude, but I forget his name even.
Byron.
I just remember that he was a Dr. Byron. Oh, right, yeah, Byron Shelley, wasn't it? Or something like that. It was...
Which is a reference to Lord Byron and Mary Shelley.
Mary Shelley, yeah. Which is a great little reference there. So I really should have remembered his name. As soon as you said Byron, though, I remembered. But should we get going anyway?
Absolutely. Okay. All right. So everybody, as you recall, for those of you who have been with us before, but this is mostly for those who have not. This is not a typical reaction video. You're not going to see any pieces of the episode in the screen. You're not going to hear any audio. There's going to be a highly filtered version of it right up there, just so you can keep in track with us. It is so grainy that you would not be able to watch the episode with that. It's just used as a tracking method.
Yeah, it's literally made of like black and white dots. So it's yeah. Yep. There's no way that anybody's watching this commentary as a substitute for the show. Like, you have to own the original episodes in order to even get anything out of these commentaries, because there's huge periods of time where we aren't saying anything because we're watching the episode.
Right.
So yeah.
So
let's get started.
So I'm going to count you in with a 3, 2, 1, and then play. So 3, 2, 1, play.
So I did mention this before we started recording, but Elias Salkind is credited with creating this character.
Yeah.
As Chris told me. But he is basically a rip-off of Morbius and Blade sort of combined.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's not the most original character, but, you know, comic books have been stealing from each other forever, you know? So, just yeah. Look at Thanos and Darkseid, if you want.
Well,
Examples.
Darkseid came first, so.
Yeah. Oh, I know that, yeah. But because the Thanos movie came out first, people today think it's the other way around. It's not.
And our old vampire is played by veteran actor Lloyd Bochner.
Can't say I'm familiar with him.
Most genre fans will recall him from The Twilight Zone. The episode, It's a Cookbook. It's a cookbook.
Right. Yeah, it's been a long time since I've seen that episode. Yeah, the To Serve Man, and it's got the guy that looks like Lurch from Addams Family as one of the aliens. He may have even been Lurch from the original Addams Family.
No, it was actually Richard Keel.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Jesus. Well, they do look quite similar. They've got a very distinctive brow.
Yep. But he also did more DC Comics related properties later on. For those who are fans of Batman the Animated Series, he was the voice of Mayor Hamilton Hill in multiple episodes.
It is funny how many people from Superboy worked on the DC Animated Series shows, the Bruce Timm stuff.
Yep.
I have to wonder if Bruce Timm was actually a fan of Superboy at all, because I mean, he started Batman the Animated Series only a year or so after Superboy ended. There's a good chance he was watching it. You know, if anybody ever sees Bruce Timm at a Comic-Con, ask him if he ever watched Superboy for us.
I mean, this whole sequence in the convenience store is so great.
And it's cool because, like, he's got that vampire ability to, you know, what do they call it? There's like a specific word for when they hypnotize people, but it's called something else. I forget what it is, but he's using that ability, but it's almost got shades of Purple Man / Kilgrave from Jessica Jones,
right,
in the Marvel Universe. I have no idea if Elias Alkind even read comics as a fan. I think he saw them more as just an intellectual property. So I have no idea if any of these comparisons are on purpose even. Could be completely coincidental.
It could also be a situation where, you know, he liked vampire movies and he thought, oh, what's the greatest thing we could throw up against Superboy? A vampire.
And he probably had people around who could have told him as well, like, one of Superman's weaknesses is magic. So, I mean, he would theoretically have known that by this point. I can't remember how many magic-based foes Superboy had gone up against at this point in the show. I can't think of many any in season 1, really.
Season 1, the only magic-based stuff that he had was the Jewel of Technical itself.
Oh, yeah, of course, yeah.
And Mixie. That was it.
Yeah, I've never classed Mixie as magic to me, though. He refers to it as magic, but I always thought of it as something else. Fifth dimensional energy imp powers.
Yeah.
But he does refer to it as magic. He says everybody in his universe can do magic, but that's all they can do, and that's why they're so bored.
Yep. Right now, we've got a great Andy sequence. You know, he's got a little character growth here. You know, talking about how, you know, he was prattling on about his shirt and Clark saves his life. And he's actually saying thank you.
Yeah, and it's funny because we have said before that it was a little while before Andy started getting any real development. I know Programmed for Death is kind of the big one, but yeah, this is only episode 4 of the second season. Like, this is pretty early, so I know I've said it before, but I do think I've been a little bit too harsh on Andy in the past. It's never that I disliked the character. It's just he was just never TJ, you know?
Yeah. In many ways, he wasn't written as well as TJ was. I mean, TJ, his personality was fully formed right from the first episode.
Well, it was easier with TJ, wasn't it? Because, I mean, he was basically just Jimmy.
Yeah.
So they just had to write Jimmy Olsen.
And I'm loving how the whole sequence here, he's with his glasses off. He's just moving to the side so nobody can see him directly face to face.
Mm. Yeah, I do like that. And it was a nice little bit of his clumsy Clark just then as he hit his head when he sat up. But without going into full-on Urkel Clark territory.
Yeah, I think that this is one of the few episodes in season 2 where he's not so much Urkel Clark. He's clumsy Clark, just not, did I do that? Clark.
Yeah. It's because, I suppose, of the era in which this show was made. Like, if you want Clark to be slightly nerdy, at this point, I guess it's the only way they could do it. Like, even movies like Revenge of the Nerds and stuff, like, they were pretty stereotypical. And we won't talk about some of the consent issues in that movie, but
yeah.
That's a story for another day. But yeah, all nerds were pretty much the same thing for a while.
Until we got Steve Urkel. And then
then every nerd was Steve Urkel.
Yeah.
I like that he actually goes back to fix it. He damaged hospital property. And I guess he's just such a good guy that he breaks in the night just so he can fix it.
Although technically, if it's a hospital, it's not technically breaking in because the hospital is always open.
He's probably not supposed to be in that area, though.
But that's why he's disguised as a doctor.
Which is clever. I like that.
And now we get our first introduction to Lloyd Bochner as the old vampire. And you're right. This is really a cheap Halloween.
It's a Halloween store costume, isn't it?
Yeah.
Although that was a decent shirt rip, I've got to say. That's one thing this show did do well, was the shirt rips. There was good variety to them. It's a simple thing.
That's really good about the vampire costume is the cape.
Yeah, the cape's not bad. I've seen much worse. And it's funny that he's wearing the amulet thing around his neck, because I think that was something that Bela Lugosi insisted on when he played Dracula. It was actually something that he requested for the character to wear. Apparently he was even buried with it, the original.
Yes.
Although I don't know if that's an urban legend, but supposedly as well, though.
According to one of his kids, he was actually buried in, if not the full costume, at least the cape.
It's one of those things because it's kind of an urban legend / mystery, that amulet thing. I know that people were looking for it for a long time because nobody seemed to know where it had gone.
The scene we're talking about.
Yeah, flying so close to the floor.
Although that's not the first time they've done that in the show.
Yeah, I never liked it in any of the other times either, though. I mean, would it have killed them just to raise him from there to there? It would have made such a difference. Have him fly down the middle of the corridor, not so close to the floor that it probably would have actually been quicker for him to just run at super speed.
I think the last time they did it was in the season 1 episode Mutant. And you're right, it looked equally ridiculous there.
Yeah. Maybe it was just something where the location that they had, maybe that's the best they could do. I can't see why, though, because surely you could just put him on slightly shorter wires.
Yeah.
Still, as cheap as the elder vampire looked, I did think that Byron, when you first saw his teeth and he was sort of snarling almost and growling, I thought he played that very well. And I thought, I've seen much worse vampire teeth on television as well. Like,
yeah, I think that's the one thing they got right on both characters here.
They didn't go over the top with it.
Yeah. And I guess you could also say one thing about Byron is he's essentially this show's equivalent to Batman.
Yeah. Yeah, he's dark, brooding, but he's a hero, all of that. He's a creature of the night like Batman, I guess. And it's funny, having him be a doctor, it's almost got elements of Man-Bat as well, like how he was a scientist and accidentally caused it in himself. I know it's not the same story they're going with here, but
yeah,
I don't know. Seeing him in the white lab coat and stuff before, yeah.
But the whole doctor thing does play into the fact that he's using this serum to keep his vampiric traits at bay.
Yeah, which is very Morbius and Blade. But comics have been stealing from each other forever, as we said.
Okay, this special effect right here was really, really cheap.
Yeah. I've got to say as well, though, I think Kevin Bernhardt does a really good job as Byron.
Yeah, I mean, he is very, very good in the role.
It's funny now that he's actually got more credits on IMDb as a writer than an actor. I guess he had a change of career halfway through, but it's nice to see that he's still working.
Mm.
Apart from some grey hair, he looks basically the same. Maybe he is a vampire after all.
Yeah. And if they had done a young Bruce Wayne TV series at this time, I could have seen him playing young Bruce Wayne.
Definitely.
Maybe have Lloyd Bochner as Alfred.
That would have been fun. Yeah. But there's a ton of actors from this sort of era that I think would have been pretty good Batmen. I know when we first started with our season 5 things, my original choice for Batman and Alfred was going to be John Shea, rather, from Lois and Clark. Just swap him from Lex into Bruce Wayne and have his British butler guy, who's an ex-secret agent, become Alfred instead.
Oh, yes. Tony J.
Yeah. Just have them as Bruce Wayne and Batman. That might have been interesting, but we ended up going with a more classical sort of choice.
And I love this scene where he's kind of, giving his little monologue as to why he's doing what he's doing.
Why he presumably is a doctor even, because, yeah, he's looking for a cure. he's looking at it as a disease, which is an interesting way to take the vampire myth. You know, it has been done before with vampirism as a kind of virus. I think even the Blade movies, I think Blade 2 was all about that sort of thing. But yeah, I think it's an interesting way to take it. It's not, while it is very clearly magic based, he hates the affliction to such a point that he's like, no, this is a disease and I'm going to stamp it out. I'm going to cure it. That's it. I'm getting rid of it.
You know, this costume that Lloyd Bochner is in, while it is fairly cheap looking, when it's in darkness, you know, when it's in like in a darkened room, it looks a lot better.
Yeah. I guess it's just too bright at the moment.
And
the amulet is pretty close though. I like that.
And maybe if the reds in the suit were a little bit deeper, like more of a maroon, it might look a little bit better.
Yeah. Or a blood red, you know. Like a dark red. Although not quite Superman Returns territory, hopefully.
Right.
We don't want it brown.
Okay, that line was really awful. Over my dead body.
I don't know. It's cheesy, but I'm okay with it.
He really should have said over my undead body.
Yeah. I don't know. I think that would have been cheesy too, but maybe even slightly more cheesy, just because he took the time to add the word "un."
Yeah.
Yeah, if sunlight hurts vampires, what's it? I'm surprised he didn't just fly towards the sun, though. I guess he was toying with him for a minute. To be fair, though, I mean, I'd be pretty pissed off if I was Superboy at this point. I'd have to toy with him a little bit before sending him to hell. Yeah. I like that line, though, that makes it clear, you know, Superboy didn't just murder the villain, you know? He's a vampire. He's been dead for quite some time. I don't think it always needs to be clarified like that, but considering he looks like an old man, I'm glad they said something. Just because the more human a villain looks, like, you know, the stranger it can be if Superboy's seen killing them on camera.
Yeah, but he had the intention of putting him to the sun, you know. So that's his intention was pretty much to kill him.
Yeah, but he's a vampire, you know. He's dead anyway. Plus, the vampire, you know, the vampire himself essentially destroyed like any chance of a cure during that scene. like, didn't he smash up Byron's like research and all of that? Like, or at least he was going to burn it. So maybe Byron got to keep it because Superboy didn't actually set fire to the place. Yeah, the only thing with that ending, it leaves you thinking, oh God, is he going to change? Is he going to be evil the next time we see him? Is the girl in the car even going to survive that encounter?
Yeah.
I like that it leaves it, considering this is sort of a horror-based episode, I'm glad that the ending isn't quite as happy as it first appears. You know that he's fighting this, what he calls, a disease.
It's really more of
again.
an addiction.
Yeah.
When you look at it.
Yeah. And let's face it, vampirism has been shown like as an addiction in so many different works at this point. Like I think Buffy did it quite a bit, when they're trying to get human blood out of like Spike's system or something after he's been, I don't know, but yeah. It's one of those things that comes about quite a bit. It's addiction, it's disease, but it's also magic. And that's, I guess, one of the reasons it's such an interesting story, I guess.
Yep.
But that was Young Dracula, season 2, episode, was it 4? Yeah, 4.
Yep.
I remembered not being overly wowed by this episode the last time I saw it, but I thoroughly enjoyed it this time.
Yeah, I mean, I look at it as, it's akin to the character of the Confessor from the Astro City series done by Kurt Busiek. The character.
Never read it, unfortunately.
Well, the character of the Confessor is essentially a Batman's type, but he's a vampire. So that's the way I look at it. This is their way of doing Batman without doing Batman.
Yeah.
And it's a very interesting character. I'm glad he does come back later.
Yeah, if this was the only episode that he'd appeared in, I would have been pretty miffed about it. I mean, I'm still annoyed that there wasn't a third, but what can you do?
Yeah, I'm a little miffed that there wasn't a third that teamed Brimstone up with Young Dracula.
That would have been great, And maybe we will have to write that as our fan fiction season 5 at some point. But that would be fun. Maybe even bring Batman into it as well. Who knows? We'll see how it goes. But no, I enjoyed this a lot more than I remembered. Sure, the costume on the elder Dracula vampire, I'm just going to refer to him as old Dracula and young Dracula from now on. But yeah, the costume on old Dracula looked a bit Halloween costume store sort of thing. Didn't look particularly great. Although you did, as you said, the cape wasn't bad. I like the way the collar stood up. I've seen better, but I've also seen worse. Yeah, that wasn't quite as bad as I remembered. The shot of him flying along the floor, though, still looks stupid.
Oh, yeah. No question about that. Every time I see him flying across the floor like that, all I can think of is that scene in Meteor Man.
I've not even seen Meteor Man, so I don't know. But
Robert Townsend's character is essentially a Superman type, but he's afraid of heights, so he only flies a couple of feet above the ground.
See, that's funny. There's not a reason like that for Superboy, so that's part of the problem, I suppose. Yeah, I don't remember how you said there's a similar one in Mutant. I think the last time I saw that episode is when we did the commentary for it.
Yeah.
Which was a little while ago now. But yeah, I don't remember how that one really compared. This is the one that I always remember as being especially bad, though. So maybe the other one's slightly better, but I would have to go back and watch Mutant again to say for sure.
Yeah. They're
yeah,
both stupid, though. I have to say that.
they both look dumb, but this is the worst of the two.
Yeah.
Well, let's give it a rating on our season 2 scale, as always. I would hesitate to give this more than a 7. Maybe 7.5 at the absolute most, but I think that's too generous.
I wouldn't go more than a 7 on this. You know, I
No.
mean,
I'm
acting
happy
is-
sticking with 7.
Yeah, the acting is great. You know, there's a
I like
few
the character. I think the writing is fine, you know. It's just kind of let down, I guess, by the budget more than anything.
Yeah. And, you know, it had so much potential, the episode, but...
Yeah. And also, you know, it's hard to do a vampire-based episode on a children's show. I mean, okay, it was a family show. It was intended for all ages. But children still had to be able to watch it. So, let's face it, the main thing vampires are associated with is blood. And you can't really show too much blood on Superboy. You know, they push the boundaries occasionally, you know. The first Metallo episode, especially, with all the blood around his neck, was particularly egregious. But, yeah, they couldn't show too much blood, as a rule, on television back then for a show intended for this kind of audience.
Right.
And I don't know, I think being able to actually show a decent amount of blood is kind of one of the main things I want to see from a vampire thing. It's the main thing they're associated with, other than wooden stakes and maybe garlic. Or I guess crucifixes as well, you know, the sign of the cross is one of their weaknesses.
Bad capes.
And really bad capes. And, you know, we had a cape that wasn't too bad in this one. But yeah, I've seen much, much better ones in other vampire fiction, you know. Even when I'm sure they had a lower budget than this, probably most of the budget in this went on the visual effects, you know, all the flying and stuff, which maybe is why the shot of him flying down that corridor is so rubbish looking. Maybe they were running out of money for this one.
But again, like you said, they could have just had him run instead of fly.
Run, add the blur effects as he runs, and sorted. You know, it would have been fine. It's still a good use of his superpowers. He doesn't have to fly in every episode, even, you know. If you wanted to do an episode where he doesn't take off even once, I would have been absolutely fine with that. But there you go.
Yep.
So, that was Young Dracula. We're agreed on a 7 because you're right. It would have been too generous to give it a 7.5. I couldn't warrant that, really. Anyway, we'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Viacom.